It's a big new beginning, Perek Sheni. I hope everyone's as excited as I am. Perek Sheni, that's all. Let me give a bit of an introduction, because I don't think we can understand what he's after without an introduction, and I think with an introduction it's very smooth, very clear, with an understanding, I should say. First of all, the entire Tomer Devorah, from the first parak to the last parak, is all about the idea of Tzelem Elokim, as we know well. Meaning that Rav Moshe Cordevaro took very seriously the idea that we're meant to emulate Hashem, meaning that we need to understand Hashem. Without this, Shemayim Hashem, Ba'aretz Nasan L'Bnei Adam, just leave it alone. But being that there's this bridge command that we must act like Hashem, we should be B'Tzelem Elokim. So then it's kind of silly and meaningless of a mitzvah, of an Indian, of being B'Tzelem Elokim if we don't understand the Elokim itself. So there's a well, the first thing I should say is that there is no understanding of Elokim.
That's helpful.
Right. There's no understanding. Ultimately, there's no understanding, but there's enough understanding apparently for us to act B'Tzelem Elokim. And that's what we need to grasp for. Some of it sounds Kabbalistic, and maybe it is Kabbalistic, but all Kabbalah is not something to be afraid of. All Kabbalah is as we know it, or as my Rosh Hashiva used to always tell me, if you know it, it's not really Kabbalah. But all it really is grasping towards the understanding of a certain essence that we normally would not bother trying to understand as simple people that we are. I don't mean simple people, but we're not even scientists necessarily, or quantum scientists or neuroscientists that we need to understand some kind of a deep thing. But again, the Tzelem Elokim is Mechayim. So Rav Moshe Cordevaro has a few different angles, if you will, at trying to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore trying to understand ourselves, and trying to know how we can act as godly creatures. So the first one we went through, which is the Yeshivisha one, if you will, and that is the understanding the Yud Gimel Midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which was no easy task either. There was a lot there of understanding, not so much the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but understanding what he does in this world. There's Hashem Kel Erech HaPayim, Rav Chesed, or in Micha's words, Mikel Kamoicha, Noisei Avmin B'Fesha. But the point is it's trying to understand, it's like trying to understand a person in history, L'havdil Elef Havdalos, by looking at what they did. Try to understand Rabbi Akiva by what he did. Try to understand L'havdil Abraham Lincoln by what he did. We don't really have access to the inside of their minds. If we had the access to the inside of Rabbi Akiva's mind, it would be, I'm sure, something so dramatic and so phenomenal that we would just be in awe. It would be like looking at Niagara Falls on speed to be able to understand the mind of somebody like Rabbi Akiva or Rabbi Meir or Hillel or Shammai. These were great. Kal v'chomer, Avram, Yitzchak, or Yaakov, to understand what was going on in there. But so trying to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but the first way to try to understand something we did in the Perek Rishon, which is to understand the midos. What are the midos of Hashem, and what are the midos we should do? And that's where most people stop. The next way to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu, perhaps the deeper way in getting closer, taking a move from what he, capital He, does, and what he is that's a big spring. Perek Aleph to Perek Beis is very big, but it's a real. If we can grasp even a drop of it, I think it's a very, very serious insight into what we are. So what we are. So the second derech of the Ramak is the derech of Sefiros. Sefiros are known to us, meaning we use the word a lot, the Sefiros. At least I do. We talk mostly about 7 Sefiros, but there are 10 Sefiros. And that's really the introduction that I want to give, to have a little bit of a Havana, at least of what the concept is. But when we're talking about Sefiros, it's important to understand that it's much deeper than Midos. Midos, it's like Midos, at least the ones we understand are like Midos, in the sense that it does represent what Hashem does, but Sefiros are dealing with what Hashem is, as opposed to what Hashem does. So actually there's 10 Sefiros. And the normal counting of the 10 Sefiros, and by the end of this number of Shurim, you really need to have this as part of your regular Aleph Beis curriculum. Like, you really need to know this. But the 10 Sefiros, as they're simply put down by the Arizal, starts with Keser. Think of it as going down the person's body. So think about it. The Mekubalim allowed us to use this mashal of the Keser, Chachma, Bina. Those are the top 3 that we talk about very little because we understand very little about them. For instance, in the Sefiros HaOmer, where we access and we talk about the Midos, we talk about the 7 lower Sefiros. We don't talk about the 3 higher Sefiros. The 3 higher Sefiros in Kabbalistic language are called the Moichin, for good reason. It's compared to a brain. Like, we can understand our hands, and the brain is very, very difficult to understand. But just to try a little bit to understand what we don't understand. So we have the Keser Chachma Bina, so that's on top, and underneath you have Chesed Gvur Tiferes Netzach Hod Yesod Malchus. Got it?
Is there any difference other than nomenclature between the Keser Bina, where the Chachma Bina Das?
So no, I don't know what nomenclature, but I could answer the question. It works. There's no difference. Either.
So it's another way of saying the same thing. You say.
Well, let me explain. That there are 10. L'kula alma, there are 10. Whether you count 10 this way, whether you count that way, and Sefer Yitzhak put forth 10 midos, or 10 Sefiros of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Keser, if you think about it, you gave us a whiteboard, and I never got a thing to stand it up on. So if somebody wants to help me with that, that'll be. But if you think about it, let's just to make it easier for you, imagine I was a whiteboard. So you have a segel. So let's say the 3 dots. The segel normally goes like this, right? So you have 3 dots, 1, 2, 3, like 2 eyes and a nose. But let's say you would invert it. That's the difference between Keser, Chachma, and Bina, and Chachma, Bina, and Das. Because on all of the charts, Keser is on top, as is a Keser. And then you have Chachma, Bina, and then you start with the Sefiros. If you talk about Chachma, Bina, Das, most notably spoken about by the Balatanya, but he didn't invent this. This was there since the we know about it since the time of the Arizal. The Arizal speaks about Chachma Bina Das. That's taking away, remove Keser, not because it's removed in any way, but because we can't possibly. There's nothing we could do with Keser, and replace it with Das, which is the inverted side of Keser, which is the dot on the bottom of the segel instead of the dot on the top of the segel. And the difference is that it's bechitzoni, you're able to understand it. So the difference between Keser, what you really have to ask is, the correct way to ask this question, is what's the difference between Keser and Das? And the answer is that it's Keser Chachma Bina or Chachma Bina Das. So Das comes under Chachma Bina, and it's something which, in fact, the Balatanya explains, but many Svarim explain, that Chachma, the Baal Shem Tov, spoke a lot about Chachma. It doesn't make a movement out of it. Chabad is the name of a movement, but the idea is that Das is something that can be used, as the Balatanya explains, derech ha'avoda. Since it's something that we can grasp because it's right above the 7 Sefiros, which are very graspable. We understand Chesed, we understand Gvur, we understand Netzach, we understand those things. So Das is what's feeding them, so we can understand Das where we can't understand Keser. But it's really just the flip side, let's call it the Chitzonius and the Pneumius, because in print it's very difficult to do 3-dimensional drawings. Really Keser and Das are in the same place, and what's really going on is it's Chitzonius and Pneumius as opposed to top and bottom. But since we're using the mashal of the segel, so the mashal of the segel has Keser on top and Das on the bottom. Anybody still with me? Okay, so that's the Das. But when we talk about Das, we're talking about Kishmoi Kenhu, what we can know. Das means knowledge. Knowledge is fascinating. Because the reason knowledge is fascinating, because knowledge is completely subjective. Do you know that, I do this for a living on the side, but like you take the idea of color, which in Kabbalistic language is called gavan or gavonim. So the idea of color, even though like we all see the same color here, the truth of the matter is each one of us is seeing something different. So when you're, what do I mean? I do this for a living. I don't paint, but what it's very interesting when you present something, let's say in print, you're saying, you could be dealing with an author, let's say, and an artist on the other side, and me in the middle. All the synapses are shorting out because what's happening is the artist is seeing one thing and the user is seeing another thing, and then when you show it for another opinion, you see yet another thing. Because color is an example of something which is completely subjective. It's completely subjective. So I'll tell you something. The being that the Mekubalim called the three Sefiros, which are like, consider it above the skyline as opposed to below the skyline. But they called it Moichin. And Moichin means simply the brains. That which is what's in the brain. I don't know really, but what's in the brain? You have like this whole. There's so many different parts of the brain. There's so many. It's much more complicated, I think, than a hand. The dimion to the human body is. I was like resting on Shabbos, and I had this thought I'll share with you. Like, if you want to get, I was just like sort of laid down. Not sort of, I was laid down. Is there, like, if you get a very well greased machine, I was thinking, like a Mercedes. So, like, one of the ways that it's a well greased machine, or a Sub-Zero refrigerator or something of high quality, is it makes very little noise. Why does it make very little noise? Because it's all the parts are so perfectly crafted, and everything is exactly in the right place. There's no rough edges there. So noise is a rough edge. So I was thinking to myself, is it amazing? Like, what's going on over here? As I'm thinking, my heart is beating, my lungs are working. So I'm not making a sound, not even a hum. You would think the body would go. Something. There's so many pieces moving. There's so many things going on.
Too low.
What?
The voltage is too low.
Okay. This is not true of everybody, by the way. Some people make a lot of noise.
Crafts. They have a short cycle.
All that noise reduces you to a Volkswagen. No, it's just like a cheap machine. If you anything, you borrow like if you borrow like a really good drill, it sounds geschmack. Like something cheap. It's crazy. So this is it's a fascinating thing that the brain, which is so complex and so many things going on there, makes no noise at all, zero. And there's so many. I mean, scientists acknowledge there's so many different things that go out of the brain. Now, a lot of the things that go out of the brain we can understand. And a lot of the things are very replicable. And for instance, since the 1950s, when artificial intelligence was invented, or thought of making robots and things like that, this was science fiction when I was a kid. It's all about replicating different parts of the brain and trying to create algorithms which will do the exact same thing and react the same way that a brain will do. And what the most at this stage of time, and probably for any time, the most or the furthest you can get, even on paper with artificial intelligence, is to create a zombie. A zombie means exactly that, a brain which is replicable 1,000 times over. Hence, if everybody's joins the same cult and takes the same drugs and eats high starch and sleeps on the floor, they will all be zombies. They will all do exactly the same thing. What's going on over there is that there's a whole part of the brain which has been discussed and called different things. To my knowledge, from the time of Aristotle, there's a book called a big thick book called The Ethics of Aristotle, Aristotle's Ethics. Aristotle's ethics. That was basically what the Rambam, Mer Nevuchim, based his Svarim on. What he's getting at there is not what's right to do and what's right not to do or wrong to do. But what he's getting at there, the whole Aristotelian thing, is to try to understand what's translated as the self, which later became known as consciousness, what scientists call the qualia, from the word quail, incidentally. The qualia is, there's a piece, think about this just in regards to ourselves or our wives or our children. There's a piece of the brain which nobody has been able to figure out yet, but everybody knows it's there. Because no matter how much you could try to replicate a brain, you're not going to get to this qualia. You're not going to get to this piece, which is the essence of it, which makes you and I different.
Is that not the neshama?
Which is the neshama. So the Mekubalim, thank you, Shul. So the Mekubalim came along and said, we know what that is. The Rambam not. We know what that is. That's the neshama. And for that matter, to be honest, in all religions, the soul. But what they're trying to describe, and we Baruch Hashem have a Masorah from Sinai in this. So like we're doing much. Aristotle did well for his considering his limitations. A human trying to, and the Rambam endorsed his derech, if you will. The Hasidim like to say, I'm not sure what their makor is, that the Rambam B'Seif Yamav became privy to the Chachmas HaKabbalah and changed all that. But Aristotle, which is not a bad book, if you could get through it, Aristotle is in direct, for lack of a better word, competition with Kabbalah, but they're both dealing with the same question of what is this themselves. This is called this unapproachable part, this part which is not understandable, this part which makes us different, one from the other. That just makes us different personalities, but we actually perceive things different. So things like the word hurt. This hurts me. Everyone has a different definition of what hurts them and a different tolerance for it, and it's a different. There's no absolute science to hurt, especially when we're talking about like a psychological hurt. It hurt me very much when you said that. Why? It's not something that anybody can understand. If you can understand it, then you'll never have a Shalom Bayis problem again. But you won't understand it because it's not. Maybe this is part of the Bechira Chavshis that a person has that we need to work around. I once had a teacher that said that there's 49 mechanisms. There were discovered 49 mechanisms of consciousness. So he said that it's all a bunch of talk. It's 49 ways of trying to explain something that we completely don't understand. In other words, it's basically talking about how something would behave, but at the end of the day, it doesn't show up under a microscope or in a CAT scan or in an X-ray. It just doesn't show up. Whereas much of the brain does. You can touch parts of the brain and make a person sing. You can give a person a good voice, but they don't have a good voice. We had a guy in our shul in Monsey who had a horrible voice. Then he had a brain tumor. He had a brain surgery, and when he came out of brain surgery, he became a chazan. To my dismay. But nobody really did have a good voice. It's true. Just frankly, Babish became unbelievable. Like he was able to hit notes and perfect. Everything was perfect. So this is pieces of the brain. Very that's neuroscience is a fascinating thing and a very complicated thing. But the point I'm making is there's a part which they call the Yetzer Hara, if you will, that which gives us different types, and all of these things we're able to have some control over. But then there's this qualia. I'll tell you, Avart, I think taste is part of what goes into there. Like some people like things. Tam v'reach elit v'chanach. So the Klal Yisrael was in the Midbar, and Hashem gave them man, and Moshe said, they said, what is it going to taste like? Anything you want. So what does that mean? It changed into ice cream. What does it mean? Anything you want. The answer is that their madrega was so shamaimi, if you will, so himmeltic, that at that point they were able to actually control the quality of their brain, or what we'll call the neshama. And the neshama is where taste comes from, and therefore they were able to have a taste like what they wanted it to taste like. My word for the day.
The Rebbe says it's not the mud.
It wasn't the mud; it was the same mud.
It was them.
The same mud. But the bria of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was such that it had everything, every possibility in it. So now it's a question of what are we doing with it? And we all know that our taste changes as our neshama changes. Our taste for the refinement of our taste, not just our taste for food, but our taste for art, or our taste for personalities, or for people, or for music. It all changes as the mind matures, or changes as the mind disintegrates. But it's this piece which is not understanding. So if you can imagine, I'm not a scientist, so I hope I know what I'm saying is accurate, but I hope I'm explaining it correctly. So if you could imagine a big brain, which is where everybody could have some access, psychiatrists, psychologists, philosophers, and then there's the piece where nobody has access. In the world of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is called the Keser. In the world of something that the Hasidim took more as a derech, it's called das. Because das, let's at least work with das. Das is knowledge. Let's work with what we can possibly understand and glean out of it. Again, why is this important? Just leave it alone, especially when talking about, because if we don't understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu's the inner Keser at all, if we have no Kesher to it at all, so then how can we possibly live B'Tselem Elokim, which tells you how remarkable our capacity is. It's just remarkable what our capacity is. We so shortchange ourselves in terms of what we can do and what we can't do, and the amount of control we have, and the amount. I mean, it's just amazing, when you talk about people picking up cars over children that are underneath the car. The adrenaline that could come. It's amazing what the koach of a person is, but it's not when that person's an automatic pilot, and it's not when a person is using every part of their selves. So certainly using your muscles without your brain is a negative thing. But you see people that are like these hilarious, these ISIS people. Like I wonder if it was difficult for this guy to decapitate somebody the first time. But it's not difficult anymore. He's totally corrupted the most inner core of his seichel, the most inner core of his brain. There's nothing left to this person's neshama. I don't think. Like there's nothing, because this is a part of a natural human being which doesn't allow you to be such a barbarian. We're not animals. We have a different kind of a brain. An animal can do that.
But like the Nazis, you must remember, who they would go to a concert, whatever, and then go up to the gas chamber.
Right, they're real good on the other sides of the brain. They would also say, "Please step into the gas chamber." There's parts of their brains that work. So when we're talking about the Sefiros, this is when we're talking about Keser. As much as the Keser is something that we cannot understand, it's something that we need to know is there, and I think that's all the Tomer Devorah or Rabbi Moshe Cordevaro wants us to know. That to understand it would be to understand Kadosh Baruch Hu. By the way, it's Rav Nachman Breslover famously said that they asked him, "Do you understand the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu?" And because he understood a lot, he said that if I understood it, I wouldn't want to worship it. Who would want to worship something that they can understand? The very fact that it's accessible and finite enough and describable enough, and it would show up under a microscope. If something comes up in an X-ray, who would worship that? I only want a Kadosh Baruch Hu that I can't understand, because that means it's lamala mimeni, lamala mimeni, and this is true not only of understanding Hashem itself, but it's true of understanding the happenings that go on in the world, which are totally not understandable, because this is the Das Hashem. And the Das Hashem is something we have to be kafuf to, but not something that we can understand. But the fact that we can't understand it is gufa b'ayla. And I think there's, at least from the time of Aristotle until yesterday, today being Sunday, scientists have worked to understand the essence of the qualia. It's not it's something that's going on in universities as we speak, trying to understand exactly what the essence of it is, but I think the true scientists, the true neuroscientists will admit that there's never going to be a time that we're going to understand something as simple as why you are different than I, in essence. So to summarize this whole little thing here, it says that there is kishem shepartzufeim eidem doimos kach dei oiseyem eidem shoyim b'lashavos. There's a lot of things of us that are similar, but the das of a person will never be similar. This is what's so beautiful about this, is that since it comes to replicate a place of infinity, which is the Kesser itself, so the das of a person has to be infinite. The possibilities for das are infinite. The infinite is within, infinite is without. Infinite means the infinite amount, the infinity within us, the neshama. The neshama has an infinite quality to it, and there's an infinite amount of infinities.
How does a husband and wife share the same neshama?
So, doesn't mean they understand each other.
Right.
But, so it's a different thing that there's a match. There's a match of this infinity with this infinity to come together. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is b'zavik zivug. This is, Shadchanim think they're smart. My experience is they're not. but what are they matching up? What are they matching up? I suppose there is some, there's some kind of an umnus, and an art to saying that but people are with, G, Y, you're the people have all kinds of formulas for matching people up, but the real essence of a shidduch is in the neshama, or in the part of in the totally inaccessible part of the brain, and that's where it has to match. And sometimes you can have that match where everything else doesn't match. So again, that takes a lot of musar to be able to. But those are things we can change, so it doesn't make any difference. But on the other hand, if it's not a match on that level, that's why you have to have betachon on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You need Hashem for. There's not a match on that level, no matter what you do. It's not going to work.
To extend that, you could ask what makes a yid a yid.
Yes, and that would be an extension indeed.
Right.
So here, Perek Sheni begins with the. So we explained the Kesser, or at least the numbers of the Kesser, the Segel, and which is Kesser on top, and Chachma and Bina, and in Kabbalistic language, there's the Yamin and the Small, the Yamin and the Smala, Ubeinai Hukala. So the Yamin and the Small is, if you look at on my whiteboard here, if you look at the chart, you'll see that there's the right, which starts from Chachma and goes to Chesed and goes to Netzach. And then there's the left, which starts from Bina and goes to Gvura and goes to Hod. And then there's the Kav Hamtsai, which comes straight from the Kesser, which is so Geshmak. So you have the Kesser, or let's call it Das. Doesn't make a difference because it's in the middle row. Just a question of where you're going. So you have the Kesser or the Das, and then under that you have Tiferes, and then under that you have Yisoid, and then you have Malchus. So it's so the Rambam tells us already, like, go for the middle path. Go for the middle path. It doesn't mean like middle path. I mean, everyone's middle is different. I always point out, what does middle mean? Like I'm going to wear tzitzis, but I'm not going to wear them out. I'm going to wear them out, but I'm not going to let them hang under my jacket. I'm not going to let them jacket, but they're going to be blue. Who's middle? That has nothing to do with it. What the Rambam is talking about, the midos, a person should go for the derech hamtsai, means go for what we called a couple of weeks ago, asisa hayashor v'hatoiv. Hayashor is yashor. So there is such a thing as chesed, but chesed is Avram. There's such a thing as Gvura, which is Yitzchak, but what we want is Sefiros Yaakov. That's sort of a blend and homogenation of the Chesed and Gvura until you come and go with the Kav Hayasher. So if you're going with the Kav Hayasher, what's really happening is that we're looking at something which is completely inaccessible, which is the Kesser, a little bit accessible, which is Das, but we're bringing it down to a place, we're able to bring it down to a place of Malchus, which is Mashiach. So what it means is that something which is infinite is becoming something which we can touch and feel. Which, at some point we will explain the Side HaTzimtzum and how that works. But nevertheless, how can infinity become finite? But the fact is that's the kav that we're davening for every day.
Very narrow bridge.
Right, very narrow bridge. But we're looking for the yosher. Yosher, be yosher. Yosher means don't be too much to this way, don't be too much to that way. It won't come out right. It'll come out wrong. You'll make mistakes. You will make mistakes. If you're completely chesed, you'll make mistakes. If you're completely gevur, you'll make mistakes. Talk about a shidduch, by the way. It's very interesting that chachma, the right side is always called the side of zachar, and the left side is always called the side of nekeva. Chachma is the side of zachar, and nekeva, bina, is the side of nekeva. Women are special. Shabina yisera leidasla. Bina. So it's a very interesting thing. Women have more bina. Doesn't mean, by the way, women. Women generally hold the characteristics of the cave, but you can have many males that have feminine characteristics and vice versa. It's all possible. But I mean, you don't want that to go too far. But the Gemara says, "Ashrei mi shebanav zacharim."
Yes.
Right? It's good to have a son who's a male. So Ashrei mi shebanav zacharim. It's like it's interesting Gemara. So, but there are feminine attributes. For instance, in the Kadosh Baruch Hu, there's both. So the Shechina, in the biological model, the Zachar is the Nosei, and the Nekeva is the Makabel. What that means is the Chachma is Nosei and Bina is Makabel. Chachma, look at Chachma as a byte of information, B-Y-T. And look at Bina as processing that information. Look at Chachma as a seed that you put into the ground, and Bina as the ground which is taking that seed and turning it into something which is alive. And look at the biological model of how children are made. It's all Meshalem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had the Shechina is the Makabel. The Shechina of Malchus is the Makabel of the Keser. But it has to go through a metamorphosis of Keser, Das, Shehein Echad, Tiferes, which is this perfect blend, which is coming together. Yesod, where heaven touches earth, to Malchus, where it all becomes real. And you have something called perfection. So when we're talking about, if you follow it along, the Zachar, for instance, is Chesed, and the Nekeva is Din, Gvura, counterintuitive. Everyone sees women as the softer ones, and men as the Midas Hadin. It's not emes. Kerachim of Albonim. Okay, Terachim Hashem Aleinu. So, like if you grew up on television, so just wait till your father comes home.
Yeah.
What happens when the father comes home? Absolutely nothing. Because it's the woman, or the Nekeva, Midas HaNekeva, which is demanding justice. There is no of which is demanding justice, but Derech Klal. It's a Nekeva virtue. It's a Nekeva thing.
Avram and Sarah with Yishmael.
Avram and Sarah and Yishmael. Perfect example. And over again throughout Tanakh and throughout Gemara. It's not that Chachma is kind of like wishy-washy, but Din, if you will, is Gvulot Chabibi, we need some boundaries here. We need some. Everyone, there was statistically, I think I mentioned the average healthy male can have something like 11,000 children in his lifetime. A woman could have 15, 16, 20. How many kids can you have? It takes time, nothing else. But the Chachma's wild. Chachma's wild, and Bina it contains it and creates a limit to it, and that's what Din is. That's what Din is. We should appreciate the Din, because what it does is it gives structure to the life of the Nekeva, and that's what the word Nekeva means. Nekeva gives the keva, asher nikvu b'shemois, it says by the Nesiim, which were distinguished with names. The keva is giving things meaning, form, like chachmas isha, bonsa beisa. Bonsa is a lashon of bina, by the way. To build something is a lashon of bina. Binyan, the word binyan, which is a building, the word of the week, right? A binyan is the same as the word ben, because a ben, son, is an extension of myself, and a binyan bina is mavin davar mitoich davar. So there's a kav here. But what I'm saying is that once you understand these attributes, then you'll understand that the attributes of chesed are the attributes of zachar, and the attributes of din are the attributes of nekeva, and either one is good. That's why you need a shidduch. That's why Chazal say that if you're alone, you're not cutting it exactly, because you have to be able to have tiferes, and tiferes is where the two things come together. And where they come together, then you could have a tiferes. You could have tiferes. You could have malchus. So you're making our different parts of us, which are sort of like out there. You're making it very real with malchus, and that's the whole line that it comes. So just let's take 5-10 minutes just to get a start on the first few words. Am I clear on this? Is there any questions? Good. Wow.
I don't think we're supposed to answer that way, clear. Based on what Rav said, I don't believe we're supposed to answer that way, clear.
Adam Perek Shady. Besides, starts the chapter with the word oid. Besides, for everything that we've learned, oid liyos ha'adam doiba lekoinoi b'midas b'soid midas hakeser. So besides for the midos of Hashem, which we described of that which Hashem does, and we want to do what Hashem does, because we're B'Tselem Elokim, we want to be what Hashem is. So that's, besides for that, person has to be Dome Lakono, has to be compared to his Creator, Besod Midas HaKeser, so high. Tzar Sheyiyu by Kaba Gufe Pu'ulais, Shehem Iker Hanhaga. And there has to be a number of pu'ulos, the lashon of the Ravak means midos. There's different things that we have to do, which come from, now this is the key word to everything that I explained, to the Ikar al-Haga. Ikar al-Haga is, if you're a real smart psychologist, you want to get to the real essence of what's making this person tick. I don't know if we can, but that's as close, am I right? You want to get as close as you can. It's not behavioral, but sort of this cognitive thing of trying to get to, it's very difficult to get to. More difficult even with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we explained, but that's what's called in his language the Iker HaHanaga, the core of the Hanaga, the Neshama, if you will. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. I just want to explain just in terms of terminology. I believe that when people say neshama, they're completely off. Like if you'll stand on 7th Avenue with a microphone and say, "What's the neshama?" You'll get 1,000 different opinions of what the neshama is, but it's. People say that, the neshama is what you have when you're alive and you don't have when you're dead. So it's not exactly right. That might be the nefesh.
Yeah.
It's if you want to get technical about it, the neshama is something which is really not understandable completely, but it's what's interesting is it's right within us. And people say are like if you want to describe existentially what is a person, like so say, well, am I my body, or by my personality, or by my neshama? So most people will say That's it. What you really are is your neshama. But this is not true. Because, I don't know, Elikai, neshama shedosata bi. That means I'm here. I'm here with my neshama, I'm here without my neshama. There's a be here. So if you're saying, what's be, existentially speaking, is not the neshama. The neshama is something that was put it within us. So we need to be clear on this, at least that the neshama and everything that we're going to learn refers to the ikar haga. The ikar haga is the real core, as Shmuel said, the part of the brain that we don't know, we can't describe, we can't see. Why can't we see it? Because it's not there in the physical sense. It's not there.
So
it'll never show up in a CAT scan,
it's not
5,000.
physical and it's not the neshama. I would think of it the opposite. In other words, like when the Rav said, "Who am I?" Right? So I would think of what the Rav just discounted. I think, well, who am I? Well, my physical body is temporary, right? So
My physical body is a zombie.
Right. So what am I? My essence is my neshama.
So I guess it depends what you mean by the question, but there's certainly a be that there's a be, and Lokai neshama just have to be before and for that matter after the neshama, and it's not just about it's not just the life force.
So is it my consciousness?
Yeah. Not sure because.
But my consciousness now is going to be different than it was after my neshama leaves my body.
So don't get semantical on me. What we're saying here is that what we need to understand is that everything that shows up on an X-ray is probably B. Everything, whether we know what it is or we don't know what it is. But then there's a piece that doesn't show, and that's the neshama. So that's all I'm saying. That's,
Ghost. Ghost.
Yeah, whatever. However you want to understand it.
But there's the nefesh.
You're getting it wrong. What?
The nefesh is there. I mean, the nefesh ruach, they're there at the same time as well. Just
I think the nefesh can be described scientifically.
Neither is the neshama.
Neither
can the neshama.
I think it can be. I think the nefesh can be described.
Oh, can we?
I think nefesh, personality, and personality changes, and it's there's actually the shape of the brain, the serpent of the brain. There's the parts of her brain which hold us back from doing things and make us nervous and shy. There's parts of our brain that makes us aggressive. All kinds of different people. Like
That's the nefesh. Don't the animals have a nefesh?
Animals have a nefesh. Nefesh habas.
Can the Rav describe the nefesh? Like
Personality. Your personality is the nefesh.
So where's the ruach?
So ruach is, what this Chaim Volozhin explains, that nefesh, ruach, neshama, nefesh is the closest thing to us. I think it's very easy to see. Ruach starts to be, the nefesh is a segue to ruach. In other words, nefesh stands between, there's the goof, which you can be dead and have a goof. You can draw a goof on you can make a golem. A nefesh is a little bit more, animals have a nefesh. Ruach, so the Kabbalah tells us the koach hadibur. Ruach mebalala. Ruach mebalala is a koach hadibur. So you're getting very close to the word, the way Rav Chaim Volozhin explains this. It's krum, that which is like mamash standing around the neshama itself. So it has hashpah from the neshama, and it has hashpah from the nefesh. So ruach is a segue from the nefesh to the neshama. And the neshama is like trying to understand a olam haba, or it's like a blind man trying to understand a color that he's never seen. You say red, you say, well, it's hot. It's not something which a color in particular is something which is beyond which is experiential. So the neshama. Let me just don't want to get too sidetracked, if you don't mind. So the kud here is. The whole thing is one big sidetrack, so I got to stay on my echo side. Only Yosodam Doma Lakono Besod Midas HaKeser, Daika, the Keser itself is a Midah. And Sar Shiyu Boy in the person, Kama Gufe Pu'ulai Shem Ikar Haga. Now let's just do the first four words and we'll call it a day. Harishayna, the first thing we need to know about Keser. HaKoilelas HaKol, which it really incorporates everything. Drum roll. He Midas HaAnova. Why? Why Anova? This is just a midah like all midas. So let me explain something, and we can prove it throughout Chazal. That anava, modesty, humbleness, is not what we think it is. We think anava, the general translation of the word anava is like, I'm nothing, I'm nobody, So, don't give me cover. That could be one of the characteristics of anava, but that's not anava. Anava is the koach to move, to go downward and not upward. What I mean to say is that, which may fit into our definition of being modest or humble, and it may not. It's really not about humility. What it is that if I'm in this ivory tower and I'm willing to teach or work with or help those that are not privileged to be in the same makom that I am, that's anava. Anava is the ability to not say, well, I'm up here and I'm working upwards, but I'm willing to go down. Meaning, I'll just give you two quick examples. Moshe Rabbeinu was anav mikol adam. Don't think it means b'chlal what we think it means. That's not what it means. It means that Moshe Rabbeinu, as high of a madrega as he was on, which is the highest madrega basically that a human being could get on, ultimate nevuah, spoke with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's our example. He's the paradigm of the highest place that a person could get. Not Yeshayahu, not Yirmiyahu, not even Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov. Moshe Rabbeinu got there. Talked to Hashem, Hashem talked to him. B'chol beisi nemonhu. He could have stayed there and been very, very comfortable. But he didn't move down. What about my people? So to take that, to be on such a high place, and to be able to always be concerned with the madrega below you, is the essence of anava. So where it says, what do we say this? Just I never in my life I never said, I shouldn't say my life, but I hardly ever Bekviyu said the Vayiten Locha after Bar. But since the Har Nof massacre, I took it upon myself plead not to say Vayiten Locha every week. So I'm like, wow, what an experience! Every once in Shabbos, like, what an experience to say Vayiten Locha. But Babaka, here you have me that sit early to show you something before you.
It's amazing.
It's a life changer to say Vayiten Locha. Besides for the school of it, it's just to dwell on a different part of it every week is a beautiful day. Aber Rabbi Yochanan, that's what we say at the end. Rabbi Yochanan, the Rosh Hashiva of Eretz Yisrael. Hamakim shata moitze gdulasei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu shama to moitze anvasanusai. Here you'll find is hanava. Davar zeh kosuv b'Torah shanoi b'neviim mishulish b'ksuvim, which means this is clear everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a string. Chuta mishulish. Kosuv. What are the examples? Very quickly. Kosuv b'Torah ki Hashem Elokeichem hu Elokei Elokim v'Adonai Adonim hakel hagadol hagibor hanoira asher lo yisa ponim v'lo yikach shoichat. The exalted master of the universe. Uksiv basrei. What does it say right after that? Oisei mishpat yosaim v'almana. V'ohev ger laseis lelechem v'simla. What does that mean? Like the exalted one reaches downward. So you take the inverted umbrella and you turn it this way. It's helping those that are him and those that are below. Mashpiyah. Shanoi b'neviim. Kol yamar. Ram v'nisa. Shoichenad. Kadosh shmoi. Marim v'kadosh eshkoim. The exalted one. V'staka ushval ruach. Lahachish ruach shifolim. Ulahachish leiv nidkoim. And what about it? He helps the downtrodden, the poor, the hurt people. Meshulash b'ksuvim. Shiru lelikim zamru shmoi soilu l'roichev ba'aravos. The highest place. The Merkava. V'kosh shmoi. V'ilzu lefano. Uksiv basrein. What's the next pasuk? Avi yisaimim v'dayan almonois. Elikim b'mayit kachai. Yehi Hashem Elokeinu imanu kasher ha'yoim avosenu al yazreinu v'al yishay. So we're asking Kadosh Baruch Hu, keep it up. Keep Keep it up. So the aside of anivus, just to, if nothing else from today, just understand this, that the aside of anivus and being doimet HaKadosh Baruch Hu is to not always look up to see what you can get, but to look down to see what you can give. And that's the anivus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's the keser. So it comes out, according to the Yesod HaRishayna, that ungraspable qualia that we really don't even understand is all about giving.
It's the most down to earth thing.
It's the most down to earth. It's all about going downwards. It's all about giving. It's all about olam chesed yibana. It's all about HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, "But I want to give." So it means to say, what does he need? He doesn't need anything. This is the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The essence of a basar. We will never be satisfied in life. We'll never be comfortable in life unless we're giving. If we're not in the matzav of giving, you can have everything in the world, I'm telling you. You will not be happy. The only way to be happy is to be like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'Tselem Elokim, and to be in giving mode, going from up to down. And that's called new taich, anova. Anova, anvas hanusai shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, going from up to down.